Hi, I am Shahini Day, founder CEO of MPEL, a digital health company providing health risk management tool for prevention and management of chronic conditions. Today, as a society, we are facing an unprecedented situation with COVID-19, and it is our responsibility to make life a little easier for everyone. MPEL team worked tirelessly to create a COVID-19 kit for everyone to access for free. Given our mission to help everyone achieve their best physical and mental potential, this is the least we could do. As a part of this initiative today, we will be talking to Toni Cannaughton. Toni is a senior clinical psychologist who has worked in the health service in Ireland for the last 26 years. Her work has been mainly with children, adolescents, and their parents. She also spent 2 years working in a service for children with autism. Her areas of specialist interests are anxiety disorders, parenting, and compassion-focused therapy. She also provides supervision to psychologists in clinical training and a staff grade psychologist. She's a mother of 3 wonderful teenagers and loves cooking, reading, and traveling. Thank you very much, Toni, for talking to us today. And first of all, agreeing to do this at such a short notice. I totally understand you were extremely busy, particularly working with HSC at this hour.
Well, I'm delighted to be here, and I'm delighted that you gave me the invitation, because I think certainly mental health professionals and psychologists, I think we're in a unique position to offer information and advice, particularly to parents about their children and young people during this very exceptional time. So we always welcome opportunities to be able to share the information that is very, run-of-the-mill for us, but mightn't be so for parents and young people.
Yeah, absolutely. It's even just before this meeting, I was just going through, there's loads of blogs coming through, and there was one with shocking kind of results coming through, just particularly on mental health side. Yeah, touch upon that later. People working from home remotely and so much of anxiety and everything. And it's spilling to the family as well,
Of course.
Yeah, I mean, because we're talking about kids, I think if we can start off, we were thinking that we are all aware of the current uncertainty of the situation, and are also aware of how this is difficult for a lot of people. But we do know that anxiety is contagious, and hiding your nervousness from kids is very difficult. How do you think parents can keep their cool and despite their own worries? I mean, I'm finding it difficult, and I have a fairly grown child.
Yeah, I think we're all finding it difficult, and certainly hands up, psychologists or our parents are finding it difficult. And parents, I suppose we're in a unique position now in that this is a global pandemic. Everyone is very stressed. We're exposed to a lot of very, very worrying information between TV news and social media. So how do parents keep their cool? How do we stay calm? And how do we mind our emotional well-being during these very exceptional times? And there are about 6 cornerstones, I think, of this, which all help us mind our mental health and promote emotional well-being. And in doing that, we're modeling these great skills to our children and to our teenagers. And the first one of these is sleep. So we need to be ensuring that we're getting good, regular sleep all of the time. The Americans talk about sleep hygiene. And really what they're talking about are the behaviors and the routines that we should engage in to promote sleep at nighttime. So I'd be highly recommending that at this time. Because many of us are working from home or off work and our kids are off school, there's a tendency to let the sleep routine lax a little bit. So people are going to bed later, they're watching back-to-back series on Netflix, getting up there, getting good sleep. I mean, we've all been there. But actually, when you're tired, you're less likely to be able to face the stress and anxiety of the following day. So we've got to see sleep as a fuel. It's like the fuel we put in our cars to keep them moving. We need sleep to move. We need sleep to relate. We need sleep to manage our children when they're stressed and anxious. So that's the first corner. Get yourself some good sleep. The second area, this is something I know you're expert on and not me, but it's common knowledge to everybody. We have to watch our diet. We've got to eat well. We've got to ensure that we're filling our temples, our bodies with the right material to keep us going. Good diet is associated with really good mental health. And again, slipping back into what I just said about people staying up late and watching Netflix, you're likely to slip out to the kitchen and maybe open that bottle of wine, or, I'm sure you do that, Shoshini, but, have snacks late at night. Again, not ideal at all. So improving your diet, hydrating yourself, all of that feeds into your good mental health and helps you sleep better at nighttime. Thirdly then is exercise. Now, we're a little bit restricted now because of the restrictions laid down by the government, but there's still lots of things that you can do. People can still go for walks, they can still go for short cycles, they can still, do keep fit at home. There are plenty of YouTube videos promoting keep fit in your back garden. Exercise promotes the flow of endorphins, those happy chemicals in our brain. We want more of that this time to promote optimism. The fourth element then of staying cool when, in very stressful, exceptional times, is to stay connected to the people that make us feel good, who love us, and who make us feel safe and nurtured. So, of course, there are those people in your family, but also staying connected maybe to your parents through, the usual platforms like, Zoom that we're using today, or Skype or FaceTime, that we're, specialized time to talk to our family and stay connected. We're entirely, and we need this to feel good. And when you're having a tough day, and when I'm having a tough day, I know there's nothing nicer than going home and talking to somebody about that, or getting online and talking to one of my friends about it. It's a huge relief, a relief of a burden. So I highly recommend that as well. The other thing I think that we have to talk about is breathing and minding our breath and watching our breath. And again, that seems so simple. It seems so happy, clappy, really. And yet, what we know from the science is that our breath is hugely involved in the controls and levels of noradrenaline in our brain. Yeah. And when we're stressed, we're breathing very rapidly, our heart is pounding, and we become overflowed with stress hormones. And when you control your breath, when you breathe in slowly, even if you were to take time out for a couple of seconds and breathe in for 5 and out for 6, you're already stabilizing the flow of noradrenaline in your brain. And that instantly gives you that sense of calm and well-being, which is very important. And finally, what I would say, and I think we've more time now and opportunity to do this, I certainly feel it myself, is to find joy in things. Find the things that soothe you and make you happy. I notice I'm walking a little bit more, probably walking more than I ever did now as a stress buster, but I'm noticing things in the locality where I live that I didn't notice before. So I'm listening to birdsong more regularly, the smell of the soil, the sun on my face. It's lovely, and just feeling grateful and noticing that instantly promotes well-being. So if you can do those elements, 6 of those elements every day, you're well on your way to being calmer, more soothed, more able to face the stresses of everyday life.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. I totally agree with you. I'm sorry. I'm actually just taking notes for myself and also to share later on. That I live in Dublin. My brother lives in Dubai. My dad, 85-year-old, who's stuck on his own in Calcutta, and we are actually having a family bridge session every day online. And it's he's very tech savvy and he loves it.
Wonderful. And I think people are being very creative with it now. So my mother was 94 on Sunday, and she's obviously not happy. And we were able to meet her online. We, toasted her with a glass of wine. She blew out her candles. We felt we were there, even though we weren't. So in the practice we've been given out about technology and social media and all of that, it really has come into its own in the crisis, I think, in terms of helping us, be closer to each other, even though we can't be physically close.
Absolutely. I think we have become very innovative as a human race altogether. And just coming on to social media, I mean, it's nicely puts it into the next question. There's so much of social media. You've mentioned Netflix, but also kids are just exposed to so much of social media, which is full of a lot of misinformation. I mean, WHO is calling it an infodemic. How do you deal with that, particularly with kids?
I think everything to do with kids. I think one of the big, again, fundamentals or cornerstones of parenting is having conversations, having discussions about everything. And social media is another one of those. And there are so many advantages, like we just listed, of, online engagement and social media. It can be absolutely wonderful. But of course, the downside of it is that people can say what they want. They're able to publish opinions that are not necessarily evidence-based or not true. And I think a couple of years ago, Ryan Tubridy referred to it as, the Wild West, where there was no sheriff, that it's not released. And I thought that was a really good term. So again, it's about sitting down. It's never too late or, never too early to sit down and talk to your kids about social media, about the wonderful advantages of it, but also what you've got to be careful about. And it's not just social media. I think this, conversation about social media can encourage the wider conversation about what is truth and how can you be a critical thinker. And that's always a good conversation and a regular conversation to have. How do I evaluate something and know it to be true or evidence-based or not biased? And unfortunately, we're living in a world where many world leaders and politicians also engage in this non-evidence-based, unscientific thought. So there's plenty of opportunity to have those conversations and to teach your children to discriminate between what's true and what isn't. And naturally, as a mom, you don't want to get into this dynamic where you're coming across like a dinosaur who's downing everything that teenagers in particular like. So, be open to hearing the debate about it as well. But teaching your child to be a critical thinker, I think, is a wonderful skill to teach them at any stage. And this actually is an opportune moment to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think you made a very good point about how can they be a critical thinker and evidence-based and try to judge what's right, what's wrong. It's very difficult, but it is absolutely necessary, because even for when they're growing up, that is beyond the COVID situation. It's when they're growing up, it's so important to keep them grounded. I mean, the other thing we're seeing is kids in these kind of situations are experiencing exaggerated emotion. So they're hearing all these things about older adults being more at high risk of this virus, and some may worry about their grandparents, some may worry about their pets. What is the best way to communicate realistic information to them in these kind of situations?
Okay. I think there's lots of things that you can do there. And again, it goes back to what I said in answering the previous question. It's about conversations and making sure that you're on top of the information as well. So, rely on trusted sources. So the HSE website at the moment of coronavirus is excellent. The WHO, the reliable news sources, RTE, BBC, so make sure that you're to answer most questions. You won't be able to answer everything. And if you're not, that's fine. You can't know everything. But that you and talking to your children in an age-appropriate way. So you're not going to get into the biochemistry of all this with a 4-year-old, but your teenage. There are lots of great, I suppose lots of science areas now we can delve into to hear about this. And I know I personally follow Professor Luke O'Neill in Trinity. He's a fantastic person, a fantastic resource if your teenagers are interested in science, because he's posting very optimistic posts every day about the race in science now to find the vaccine for this, and kind of keeping you on top of all the scientific information. So ones you're being age-appropriate space to talk about. Obviously, if they're worried about their older relatives, like their nanas and granddads, again, you're relying on your social media platforms. Again, make sure they're able to see them online, that they can talk to them and show them their drawings and link in. It's different, obviously, if your older relatives are in a nursing home, there might be more significant concern there. And again, it's about ensuring that you tell your children that you know, the HSE and the staff working in those homes are working to the very best of their ability to ensure that their older relatives are safe. So as part of that conversation, I think, you know, safety is the child's own safety, and their fears about their safety need to be addressed. So it's important to communicate that for children, even for children who, you know, catch this virus, that is, they're very mildly symptomatic. It's nothing to worry about, really. That they're in a good place. So it's about talking facts, keep the conversation age appropriate, and let your children know that you too can be a trusted source, that they can come to you and talk about the things that they're worried about. Keeping that open door, I think, is very, very important, and checking in with them, you know, and with teenagers too, I have to say, because sometimes teenagers won't convey that they're anxious because they're worried that they might upset you or they might hurt you. So just make an open channel for that.
I think, I mean, if anything has come out of this, I'm finding I'm talking to a lot of parents, and we have kids, and I'm finding there's a lot more compassion coming through as well. I think this, in this,
isn't it?
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, you talked about teenagers thinking that holding back because of they're afraid that they put their parents in anxiety. The other side of it is a lot of, as human beings, probably we tend to blame someone in a very difficult or something in situations like these. I mean, this can create some kind of social stigma, or can be harmful towards a certain group of people. Children, they often pick up all these negative emotions easily, and I mean, might end up in a negative kind of scenario in terms of discrimination against a group or people in future. How can this be controlled? I mean, I know it's a lot dependent on the parent as well. Not to
it is back
those emotions.
Everything is on your parents. I mean, children learn their values and their attitudes, and it's what you learn from your parents. So if your parents exhibit stress in a way that's unhelpful, children learn that pattern as well. In relation to your question now, I think it does go back to the core family values that you share with your children. So, you know, if from the very beginning you are sharing values which are grounded on principles of respect for everybody, justice, but obviously, you know, we certainly did see it at the start of this virus of, you know, anger or hate shown towards particular members of the population internationally. You know, that was awful to see, and certainly, you know, I know children of particular ethnicities were reporting feeling unsafe, that they were being bullied on the street, friends, or, you know, if they're on a Zoom and they're hearing this kind of thing. Again, it's about going back to that conversation that, you know, this virus is no respecter of ethnicity or race or religion, or this is a global pandemic. This is about all of us.
Yeah.
And it's going to require a global response. So I think if you're always, you know, as a parent, espousing those principles of respect and dignity and compassion for everybody, you're much less likely to see that. And your child, if they hear it, is going to flinch a little bit, because this isn't something they're used to, and they know it's wrong. So again, it's about having the conversation, you know, have those age appropriate conversations. If a child is hearing or talking about, you know, other children of a particular race and associating them with the coronavirus, well, that's bullying, and that's another good conversation to have. So I think it's about your core family values, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely agree with that. Absolutely. I think going back to your very first answers to the 6 cornerstones, I think that's very, very important for both the parents' side and the kids, and the parents to implement with the kids. Those 6 things are very important, I think, to just keep calm in this whole situation. Yeah. Coming to some more lighter side, I mean, what are kind of engaging activities or routines that you think children could follow at this time to keep up with their mental well-being rather than like, yeah, they're restricted, but they're still probably getting more physical activities than us. But on the mental well-being side, what can they do?
I think there's lots of things you can do. I have felt for a very long time, actually, that children in Ireland are really overscheduled. I hear a lot of, parents coming in to see me in the clinic, and they're very busy. They're going from horse riding to ballet to Gaelic football to rugby. And you're thinking, where are you sitting down and having a rest as a family? Where are you just being? So I think we're in a different, we're seeing the flip side of that now. More parents are at home, they're working from home. They temporarily, I hope, we don't have any permanent job losses here in Ireland, but a lot of people have lost jobs in retail and tourism and those industries, unfortunately. So it's about saying to yourself, how can I be creative around this, knowing that I have to stay at home and I'm within that restriction of the 2-kilometre radius thing as well. So it's about, your children better than anybody. You know what ticks their box and you know what gives them joy. So I would say keep things structured. So when they, technically go back to school on Monday after the Easter holidays, a lot of parents are saying it's useful to maybe get the homework and the study bits done in the morning so that you can have lunch and then move into something nice in the afternoon. And there's something nice things, as I said, that your children love. So it could be baking. Baking, that's a bad one in our house because I need to. So I'm not recommending that, actually. Art, work. A lot of the more booky kids, I think it'd be wonderful to start a social history journal, to keep a scrapbook, keep a diary of this, because in time to come, our children's children are going to be reading about this in their history textbooks. And it would be wonderful to have something that a child collated to say, I lived through this piece of history. Get them doing exercise. I mean, if you have a back garden, use that back garden. If you don't have a back garden, walk around, go for that walk. Be ingenious about it, be creative. I know you mentioned earlier that people are being so innovative at the moment. They are, necessity is the mother of invention. So structure, fun, the diet and sleep obviously is important, and doing things that make kids laugh. Do the board. One of the things I think is really useful as well is that what I'm noticing personally is that the days are blurring into each other. I don't know if you're feeling that too. So it's nice. Yeah, it's nice to demarcate the weekend has been a little bit different. So maybe in terms of activities, you could think about doing things that maybe you only do on a Saturday or Sunday. So that could be, for example, you have a lovely, nice lie-in all together on a Saturday and somebody makes an extra special breakfast, or you could have movie night with popcorn on Saturday night. Just that this is a weekend, a little bit different to what we do during the week, because otherwise there is that kind of blur. And I think when we get into that and we're loose and unstructured, it makes us feel insecure and uncertain. And then you're trigger points for anxiety and low mood. So activities, rest, fun and laughter. And the fun and laughter piece is important because in the middle of this pandemic and this health emergency, it's very easy to forget that we can laugh and we can have fun. And that's even with the terrible news we hear every night about, family members having died in Ireland, which is terrible. And it's no disrespect to those families, for those of us who haven't been affected by that, to try and find those pieces of joy that keep us going, and to remind ourselves as a family that we're together. It's tough, but we're going to try and make the best of it. So it's about being really creative, and you're not going to feel like being creative every day, let's face it. So, not to be too hard on yourself either. There are days when you're not going to have the energy to be, super mum that comes up with a fantastic timetable. So it's okay to yourself and let that go. That's fine. You get it right most of the time, that's good enough.
Yeah, I find it very difficult to keep track of days and times. I forget which date it is and all that. But I have to say, I absolutely love your idea of social history journal. I absolutely love it. It's brilliant.
I think, and kids have more time. We have the time to do that. So they could make scrapbooks, including, that information leaflet that came into each house from the government, of maybe taking pictures in queues. The way you see queues of people with their masks on outside supermarkets. How different Ireland is now to the Ireland we had last December. To talk about maybe the value changes. we're not so much, going shopping on a Saturday anymore to the various retail centres. We're at home having to think about nice things to do. Maybe we're playing more board games now. Maybe we're learning the value of compassion and altruism now. I think all of those things would be really interesting. It's not for everybody. I mean, a person who's good at art might decide they want to keep an art portfolio of everything that's happening now. But I think when we're living history, it'd be nice to record it, to be involved in that kind of project.
Yeah, we're definitely living history, and a lot of things are going to change after this. And talking about change, I mean, what could parents do to kind of monitor and control? I hate these two words, but just to be aware of sudden changes in behaviors. What type of changes can happen in behavior or moods, and maybe what are the signs? Sleeping patterns, change in appetite, or whatever. I mean, what are the signs for that?
Well, when you see, I suppose, changes in sleep or changes in diet that aren't related to what I was talking about earlier, in the sense that we're, staying up later watching movies and we're snacking a bit more. This is a little bit different. If you're noticing regulation changes in your children, that's often a clue that they're maybe suffering with stress and anxiety themselves. And more often than not, you'll see it in younger children who maybe don't have the language to come and tell you that they're anxious. They're not able to label anxiety as a feeling. They don't have that concept. So it's like their body is giving you clues that there's something wrong, and I need to check this out. And so again, this is an opportune time to help younger children identify feelings, label them, and then work with you around, how do I cope with this? How do I cope with me when I'm feeling stressed or upset or really worried? So that's really good mental health education training. And that's a gift, as I said, for life. So the silver lining in the coronavirus and what it's doing to society at the moment is that it's giving us the time and the opportunity to help our children identify their feelings, help them cope with unhelpful feelings, and take that forward. So if you're noticing your child is not sleeping or not eating, sit down and talk to them. It's likely that they're feeling symptomatic of anxiety, and they might be worried they have the coronavirus because, yourself, when you're feeling anxious, you can get a tightness in your chest, or a little person might assume they have the coronavirus and they're terrified. So, explaining to children that our body gives us clues when we're stressed or anxious, I think is really helpful, because from that conversation you can go into explaining what that means, and that's your thoughts that are causing your feelings, and that then influences our behavior. So I think there's an opportune time to do that. So if parents are noticing these regulation difficulties, get in there and talk to your children, and maybe get them to draw pictures about how they're feeling if they haven't got the language to tell you. Be creative around it as well. You're going back to this whole necessity being the mother of invention thing. If you're creative with this, particularly with younger, because they're not going to sit down with you and say, oh, well, Mom, I feel stressed because, older children will be able to do that. So you have to kind of think, how can I help my child express this in a way which explains it to me, and which I can then give them the language and the vocabulary to explain again when this happens to them again.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I was telling my son that I actually am thankful that this time, just before he's going off to college, hopefully, I got this time with him, because I had to go back to work after he was born within 16 weeks. So I actually missed a lot of his childhood, and this is a good time for me.
I think you've made a really great point. And again, it's about trying to find the good things in the middle of the terrible news that we're hearing every day. And quality time is one of those good stories. I totally agree with you on that. We need more time together as a family. I think it's wonderful. I know it's not wonderful all the time for everybody. And I know being hot-housed with a family can be dangerous in some situations for some families. But, I think for the most part, I think this is a great opportunity. As you said before, your son goes off to college, to have this time with him. It's like you're getting to know each other all over again. And I think there's something really, really positive about that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And coming to that, I know, like, it's a topic very close to both your and my heart, because we have kids, both of us have kids who are affected by this, the leaving cert.
That's right.
That's been postponed. This is adding further anxiety to the students, and not to mention the parents. So what would be your advice to the kids and their parents? Because you are coming from both as a mother and a professional perspective.
Yeah. Well, obviously the news came out on Thursday. I think there had been a lot of uncertainty up to that point. There's still a bit of uncertainty because even though the department are saying July, August, we still don't know. There's no timetable. It's very hard to plan because it all depends on this virus. So uncertainty is one of the greatest triggers for stress and anxiety. I really feel for the Leaving Cert students, not just because I'm a mother of a Leaving Cert student, but because it's such a big marker in Irish life. So poor information, and this has made it so much worse because the Leaving Cert students, for the most part, have a 19th of June. All I kept hearing about was on the 19th of June, that was it. The books were gone. You could say goodbye to subjects you didn't like. You know, looking forward to holidays, graduation, all the little ceremonies that go on within a sixth-year student in school. So it's devastating. And I know I've been reading online, you know, people are being a bit dismissive of it and saying, oh, you know, just get on with it. There are people dying with this virus. This is such a small thing. Really, this is first world problem stuff. But actually, for the students who are sitting it and for their families, it's not. This is big stuff. And I think that needs to be acknowledged. So what I would say is, you know, maybe start with how I started this conversation today, that, you know, you're going back to those elements of good mental health and promotion of good psychological well-being. The Leaving Cert is stretched out now. So there's plenty of time. And certainly I've been recommending to students who've been calling me here, you know, to down the books for now. Just take a break for the Easter break and maybe think about starting again on Monday. Set up your timetable. You know, be creative with that timetable and add in breaks into that. And I'm thinking particularly of perfectionistic students, you know, who are pouring everything into this and forgetting that they need a break. So lots of breaks are important, but of course stick to your timetable. Eat well, sleep well, stay connected with your friends through the platforms that, like we've just described. You as a parent, what can you do? I would say, and particularly when you're dealing with teenagers, that you're certain that they know that you're available. And I find, you know, as I said to you, when I go home, I'm not a psychologist anymore, I'm somebody's mom. But I think when we're parents of teenagers, we do a lot of talking and very little active listening. I'd say the percentage is probably something like 70, where it's, have you done this? Did you do that? Have you watched this? Are you studying? You know, and there's very little listening going on in that. So I think if I were to advise parents right now, and something I'm trying very hard to do myself, is to be available and to listen. And that means that I'm reflecting back. So my son was understandably very frustrated on Thursday, as I'm sure yours was. And so I just decided I was going to sit back and listen to that. I wasn't getting into problem solving. I wasn't getting into things like, sure, what else could the Department of Education have done? I was reflecting, this must be very you. I can see how this would be available to hear. Now, he's moved on a bit now because other things are happening. You know, he's a move on kind of guy anyway. But it's about planning forward, making sure that they stay well, making sure that they're having fun in whatever shape or form that makes. Find the thing that makes them happy, that gives them joy. And, you know, we get through this. And I think there are websites out there. I know spunout.ie is really good, and they have a lot of contributions from Leaving Cert students there at the moment who are talking about the impact of this delay on the Leaving Cert on them. And I think it's useful for teenagers to use sites which have contributions by teenagers as opposed to psychologists, because they really get it. And the other thing I'd recommend, if your teenager is still feeling very stuck and very stressed and very anxious, is and some kids mightn't go for this, but is to maybe take part in the stress control sessions that are available online at stresscontrol.org. These are really, really good. They're run by Jim White, who's a consultant clinical psychologist in the UK. And this program is endorsed both by the HSE and the NHS. Learning all about stress and anxiety and strategies that you can use to deal with it. So I would highly recommend that to anybody, both for parents and for young people, actually. It's highly educative and it's skill-based. And when all of this is over, you still have that little toolbox in your head that you can take with you to other stressful situations. So lots of resources available online. Another good website would be Anxiety Canada. They have a forum there for young people. And while it's not necessarily for Irish kids, why I like it is that I think it presents the education bit and the psychology bit and the physiology bit of anxiety really well. It's really worth it from an educative point of view. So I'm rambling a bit here. What I'm saying really is be available, support, and do all the other things that I mentioned at the start of this conversation. Get them to stay well, to mind themselves, to structure their day, not to be getting up too late if they have a study timetable in mind. The other big important thing, and I was very reassured, I have to say, by the teachers' unions coming out saying that they're going to support the Leaving Cert students' prizes. Yeah, that was a relief. Is for schools, I'm hoping schools will stay in contact, both in terms of, communications from tutors, from your teacher, maybe more online classes. I think that would be very beneficial. The difficulty here for students who aren't very naturally driven, and I think that's most people, is that it's very hard to study for a Leaving Cert all by yourself when you're not having maybe more classwork. And I don't think it's enough to send home homework. I think you have to have that online teaching bit as well.
Very much.
Some students are fine. I reckon the majority of students need that high level of support. So that might mean if you feel your space isn't doing that you might maybe give them a gentle reminder, a little nudge that maybe your child is struggling a bit with a little bit of support and help.
Yeah, absolutely. And particularly, I think, because they will be probably missing the classroom time, which I remember my when I was doing, we used to call it higher secondary, not Leaving Cert. I enjoyed my last year in class. They're going to miss that, the banter.
It's very sad. And I think, as I said, you're missing out on the rituals of in a sixth year. Their class graduation dinners, their graduation ceremony that their parents are able to go to. I think that's really sad. I know some people listening to this might feel, again, very first world problem. It's the storm for these young people at this time. So much depends on your Leaving Cert. And they don't have the fun bits now that make the Leaving Cert year bearable. So I do feel for them, I have to say.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you so much. I mean, I think we got a huge amount of resources from you, and we will try to put up some of these links on our COVID-19 kit on MPEEL website. Definitely the stress control sessions, definitely they look...
well, Shohini, I'm sorry for interrupting you. You're looking to put up pointers to really good resources. One of the best sites at the moment, I think, is the Psychological Society of Ireland COVID-19 section of their website. It's really, really impressive.
I will. I'll have a look and probably link it.
Lots of it. And what's really lovely is that there are storybooks that they recommend that parents can read to their children about the coronavirus, and they're child-friendly and they're beautifully illustrated. And if you have young children and you're struggling yourself as a parent to explain it, these books are fantastic.
That's amazing. Thanks so much, Toni. This is brilliant. I mean, that's a lot of resources people can access, and we'll put up links to this definitely. Lastly, I think, we could take only one question from the public. There is one question here, and which is, I think, very pertinent, because I was just reading a blog this morning about people working remotely, and parents working remotely, trying to juggle family and work challenges. I mean, what are the things a parent can do to help maintain their own well-being? I mean, there are funny videos out where you're trying to do a call and then kids are screaming behind you. What can you do yourself as an employee working from your kitchen table?
I think it's very difficult. I think it's about taking the practical steps to try and get into work mode and divide your house in as much as you can from your office space, where you're doing your baking or where you're coloring with your children. I think it's a particular stress, I have to say. And I know personally it's not something I'm really good at. So even today, to talk to you, Shohini, I had to make sure I was in my office, because if I'm home, I knew it was going to be very different. There'll be a lot more noise, people walking in and out. I think it's a particular challenge. I think everybody knows their own house best. So I think you've got to be disciplined about, if you know that you're going to be working at home from, for example, 9 until 11 or 9 until 1, that you're very clear about defining that space and you're putting the practical things in place to make sure that, your 2-year-old isn't coming in while you're in the middle of a conference call or whatever, that if you have a partner that maybe he or she can, do that bit for you. So again, it's about really good planning and really good structuring. And also it's about being very defined around how you do your work. Again, I said, I'm not good at it. So if I'm going to get home on my laptop, I'm probably going to be heading out for a sandwich. I'm going to be heading upstairs. Did I put the wash on? I'm not really good at that. So I think you have to be a very self-disciplined person to do that. It's possible, but you've got to be disciplined and you've got to put the boundaries in place, or it's not that effective. I think some people are really good at it. And I think we're moving in society, and this is teaching us that, where more people actually are going to be working from home.
Yeah, definitely.
And do all the cornerstones of everything that I said in relation to mental health. Define your space. I was talking to somebody, a clinical psychology student recently, and she's living in an apartment. So she said that she uses a screen, I think that she had bought in IKEA or somewhere, to divide the room, so that this was the nice part of the room where maybe I eat or watch TV, and this is the work defined part of the room. And she said for her, that makes a huge difference. It's a small thing. Now, obviously, IKEA is shut now. You'll be, ordering online and waiting weeks. But again, it shows the importance of delineation of space.
Yeah. Just put the error in between. But I think also what I would feel like, we are quite used to working online, being a software company.
Yeah.
I think we are much more, people are probably becoming much more tolerant. Tolerant is a bad word, but accepting of that there will be disruptions. If there is a 2-year-old running into the room, conference call going on, the other side will probably, I think, will be much more acceptable of that.
Understanding.
Yeah.
I think you're right. And I think that kind of acceptance and understanding belongs to certain kind of jobs. I think if I were to do a teletherapy session with a client, for example, I couldn't have family members walking in and out between myself and my client. Yeah. So I think it depends on whatever kind of work you're in. I think you're dead right. Your kind of work, I think you're used to it. It's a different kind of relationship. But certainly for mine, that would be very difficult. And I know it's very difficult for a lot of my clients at the moment, because they're having telephone sessions with me, which isn't the phone connection I would have in a session, but it's like everything else, having to flip things over and be creative and do our very best to try and make is a very, very difficult situation.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Toni. That was, I think, the most exciting part of the day today.
Oh,
I absolutely loved it, talking to you. You've given us so much to work with. I'm sure it's very helpful to everyone.
Thank you so much. That's really nice to hear. I'm very passionate about this. I think, you know, this kind of mental health information is public health information. It's
Yeah.
as important as the more medically based information that you hear from time to time.
Very
So I'm
good.
always excited to have opportunities to share ideas with parents. Being a parent is hard. It's certainly made a lot more challenging now with the onset of coronavirus, but there are lots of things that we can do to stay afloat, to stay connected to our children, and to try and be optimistic and hopeful and get the best of what is obviously one of the greatest challenges we've faced in our lifetimes.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Toni, for your valuable time. Really appreciate it. Thanks. Take care. Stay safe.
Yeah, you too. Stay safe. Stay at home. Wash your hands. Be safe and be well.
You too.